I am in the Hoh rainforest, headed for what may be the quietest 1 square inch in America.
Well, I don't think it gets any more perfect than this, but Hannah has kind of lost her voice on this episode of Quietest Places on Earth.
But I'm gonna do my best.
She's gonna do her best.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Starting off our list today with the literal quietest place on Earth, the Anechoic Chamber, located in Orfield Laboratories in Minneapolis. This thing is insane. I mean, just look at it. It's been designed to be the most noise-resistant place in the world, with its ability to stop reflections or echoes of both sound and electromagnetic waves, which is where it got the name anechoic. No echoes. It's completely soundproof, inside and out. Any noise made inside of the chamber is immediately absorbed by the walls and therefore is unable to bounce back into the room. It is so quiet you can literally hear yourself blink. I mean, imagine screaming inside of this thing. Because experiencing pure silence is such an inhuman experience, the maximum amount of time spent by a person in the chamber is 45 minutes, and it is believed that staying in for any longer could actually drive a person insane. If you ever wanted to experience this strange, soundless void for yourself, you're in luck. The laboratory offers private experiences in the quietest place on Earth for just $75 a head. Pricey, I know, but if you're a mother of 5, it might be worth it to visit the Guinness World Record holder for quietest place in the world for just a few moments of peace and silence.
There's a story about a violinist who visited there and was so freaked out by the silence that he had to leave. Apparently he actually heard, like, he lifted his eyebrows up and heard his skin rubbing along his skull. Isn't that insane? Like, that's how much you hear in there. It's nuts. Anyway, the Makgadikgadi Pans in Botswana is said to be the birthplace of modern Homo sapiens. It's also said to be one of the quietest places on Earth during the dry season. I couldn't find any proper examples of the quiet, seeing as every travel video I came across was accompanied by sappy electropop in the background, but I'll show you some images and muted footage here, and you can just imagine the quiet. Let's do some ASMR here. Or I'll shut up for a moment so we can simulate it. Ain't that something? You might hear a little bit of wind going by. Beautiful. The Pans are one of the largest salt flats in the world. People will say that if you stand in the middle, it feels like you can see forever. The ground is covered in a white, salty crust that can sparkle in the sunlight. Now, the place is almost completely barren and eerily quiet in the dry season, but during the rainy season, the area can transform into a temporary wetland, attracting thousands of flamingos and other birds. You might also see zebras and wild beasts migrating across the pans.
Next up on our list today, we have Be Ha Cenote in Mexico. Not only is this place beautiful, but it's incredibly quiet. In fact, if you stay perfectly still and don't say a word while inside of the cenote, other than the sound of your own breath, all you will be able to hear is the occasional sound of mineral-rich water dripping from stalactites down into the stagnant water below. There are two types of cenotes, open cenotes and cave cenotes. Taklamakan is a cave cenote, which of course aids in its quiet nature. As I said, it's absolutely beautiful just to look at, so I can only imagine what it would be like to visit this place that is the true definition of quiet serenity. The temperature inside of the caves sits at an unwavering 26 degrees Celsius, which is 78.8 degrees Fahrenheit. But that's okay, because if you're finding it too hot, you can always cool off by taking a dip in the fresh waters of the cave in pure silence.
Next up, we have Steinmetz Hall, a Florida concert venue. This place is known for its perfect acoustics. It has an N1 sound rating, which is described as the lowest level at which humans can detect sound, and that's because this venue was built to basically float inside its building. So between the hall and frame, there are hundreds of rubber pads which absorb vibrations and block outside noise. This keeps the inside so silent that if you were to sit in the venue when it's empty, you could probably hear yourself blink. The lack of sound has been described as almost otherworldly. You become hyper aware of the sounds of your own body, like your breathing and your heartbeat, which probably give me a panic attack in about 60 seconds, but it does sound, see what I did, we're gonna have a lot of sound puns, I imagine, on this list. It does sound like a great venue for music.
Next up, we've got 1 square inch of silence located in Washington's Olympic National Park and considered by Emmy Award-winning acoustic ecologist Gordon Hempton to be the world's quietest natural spot. The reason why the forest and the square inch of silence inside of the forest, marked by Hempton with a red rock, is so quiet is because of the coniferous plants that make up the forest, which muffle sound, creating the perfect quiet spot to sit and read a book. People who visit the forest are instructed to keep noise to a minimum while inside of its 90,000-acre perimeter to keep from disrupting the silence. Not only that, but pilots have also been known to make minor adjustments to their routes in order to avoid flying over the spot in an effort to reduce noise pollution in the area. Gotta love a respectful pilot.
Now we head to Hawaii with the Haleakalā crater, deemed one of the quietest places on the planet by acoustic experts. Its ambient sound levels have been described as being, quote, near the very threshold of human hearing. When you visit this massive volcanic crater, you're standing on a dormant volcano surrounded by a landscape that feels like it belongs on another planet. The crater itself is huge, stretching over 7 miles across and plunging 2,600 feet deep. And it's said that the quiet is so deep that it can feel almost unsettling. Unlike most places, of course, where you hear the constant hum of cars, wildlife, here it's just stillness. The vast, barren landscape absorbs sound, so even a gentle breeze or the crunch of gravel under your feet seems loud by comparison.
Next up, we have Microsoft's Building 87, also known as where sounds go to die. As you can see by the images, it looks pretty similar to the Anechoic Chamber I spoke about earlier, probably because it's incredibly similar, so similar in fact that it's actually the exact same thing. And the building has 3 of them. The silent spaces are used by the tech company to test audio devices such as speakers and other audio and recording devices. The noise level in the chambers is negative 20.3 decibels, which is crazy when you consider the fact that a normal conversation can range anywhere between 40 to 60 decibels. The main difference between the Microsoft Anechoic Chambers and the ones at Orfield Labs, while the Orfield Chambers are open for tours, the Microsoft ones are strictly business. But apparently you can take a virtual tour of the facility if you're into that kind of thing. Don't know how the sound part would translate, but give it a go. Let me know what it's like. Not sponsored.
Of course, though, we gotta talk about Antarctica. Antarctica is one of the most remote and barren places on Earth, virtually untouched. It's also known for being eerily quiet. It looks like an endless landscape of ice and snow with no cities, no roads, no crowds. Not only is Antarctica isolated and remote, there's also very little wildlife here. I mean, there is wildlife, but not a whole lot of it. So there's not much to make noise other than the sound of ice cracking and wind, and even then the ice absorbs sound, so even the sound of the wind and the shifting of ice gets a little muffled. Most of the time, though, you'd probably only hear your own footsteps, the rustle of your clothes, your own breathing. Describing all these places, it does make them sound very peaceful. The lack of constant ambient noise, the honking horns, people swearing in the street. I like the idea of pure stillness in theory, but after a while, it would have to feel pretty strange and unsettling. The emptiness of a vast, barren place like this just make me feel so small and insignificant, almost like being in space.
Next up, we have the CSIROS, or CIROS, Murchison Radio-Astronomy Observatory, located in Western Australia in one of the world's most remote locations. There is pretty much nothing in the area except for the radio telescope, which is used to listen to radio waves coming from outer space, which obviously wouldn't work outside of an area with virtually no sound and no radio waves in the surrounding area either that could interfere with the telescope's ability ability to detect sounds from space. No electromagnetic equipment that is turned on may be taken into the area, which is a designated radio quiet zone. But what is allowed is stargazing. Because of the area's remoteness and lack of light pollution, it is one of the most amazing places to get some peace and quiet and take a breather while looking up at the vastness of the night sky.
And finally, we have the Taklamakan Desert in China. The Taklamakan Desert is one of the largest and most desolate deserts in the world, and it's also renowned for being incredibly quiet. This massive desert, which spans about 130,000 square miles in the Xinjiang region of northwestern China, is often called the Sea of Death because of its harsh conditions and the extreme silence. The silence here is mostly due to its vast, empty landscape. It's mostly made of shifting sand dunes, some of which can reach up to 1,000 feet high, and these dunes are constantly being reshaped by the wind. But there are very few plants or animals to create any noise, so here you're just surrounded by an almost unbroken silence. There's just the soft ambience of wind moving the sand, which sounds really nice. But there are no rivers, and you can go a long time here without coming across another person. The stillness here is so still that it can be disorienting, making you hyper aware of even the smallest sounds that you make. Just like Antarctica, this place is incredibly remote and empty. Well, you got through it, Hannah. Not that we have to film another one right after this. Anyway, we hope you've enjoyed this very quiet episode of Most Amazing Top 10. Hopefully we've lulled you into maybe a beautiful slumber or something. We'll catch you in the next one.